Forbes, good to have you back on.
Jimmy, this is such a treat. You know, I'm out here. This is the first leg of like an 8-week tour for me, speaking tour. And I'm missing COVID a little bit. Not COVID, but the times when you could sit at home and can't go anywhere. And now I'm on plane after plane after plane. But I feel so blessed. Hopefully I'll make you blush. And for those of you watching, you missed a really good event. And I go to a lot of events. And I've been going to events since I was 31 years old. That's what changed my life, was a seminar. Was the idea of hearing people speak about their emotions, their feelings, getting people to cry as a group and release. I never even knew that world existed. And so I've been a part of this ever since. 2 days ago was very special. The lineup that you had, you hear this story about somebody who's supposed to be in jail for the rest of his life, and he looks like white toast. Like he's like whitest guy you've ever seen. And he tells a story about no tattoos and no gangs, and he's very well spoken. And then Keaton, Mr. Muscle, oh my gosh, who I got to spend the day with before because of this event. I got to do what I do, got beautiful reception, and then was followed by Ed, who just blew up the room. The whole day had an arc to it because it wasn't a sales fest. It was people sharing what they do. I mean, I'm excited to bring people into my world just because I got to tell you, all day for the next 2 days, what do you do? Oh, God, I'm so nervous to tell you, Forbes. I can't wait to find out what I do. And if I can tweak messaging, I think that's why I'm here right now. I hear it better than anyone else.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can have the best message in the world, but if you don't know how to get it out, it doesn't do any good.
Well, but everybody does have a good message. They have a good product.
Right.
And I will tell you, it's a really weird phenomenon. Even after I taught what I did, I've asked a couple of people. I think I asked Mo last night. Get this. I said, what do you do? And he's like, I do a lot of things. I'm like, oh, dude, you didn't learn anything.
So talk about that. You taught that from the stage. You had some people, you're known. I mean, that's what your expertise. I mean, you pitched over $2 billion worth of sales products. Tell us what you taught on the stage a little bit about pitching and why people are so poor at being able to explain to others what it is they do.
Well, because just that word. No one asks you to explain. I don't meet and go, hi, Jimmy, could you explain to me what you do for a living? And no. We say, what do you do, right? But we don't really mean that. We don't really care. Why are we even asking what you do? You know how in the hallway, you're like, if like at work, you're like, how you feeling? If somebody says, oh God, I feel terrible, you're like, I'm so sorry I asked. The answer is, I'm fine, I'm doing good, I'm fine. So when you meet someone, to figure out who they are, what world they fit in, we all seem to ask this question, what do you do? But then you have an option to hear that question differently. Do you really want to tell a stranger all the things that you do? Do you have enough time in your life? Well, I graduated high school early and I did this with it, and I got 5 businesses. Why are you talking? And I think if you just take a step back and go, why are you talking? Do you know? I mean, you're a skilled salesman, so you kind of know. But when you meet somebody, and let me just break this down because I'm kind of curious.
Sure.
You meet somebody for the first time, what do you want to know about them?
You kind of want to know who they are.
And how quickly can you get to that?
Not that quick.
Right, but what if you could? What if this one sentence lets you get to who I am so quickly that we realize there's a bond or there's no bond? And I think a little bit of my ADHD helps. It's like, I don't want to talk about frivolous things.
Yeah, I can't even get into surface conversations anymore. I have no desire to be in it. I just won't go there.
So ask me what I do. And by the way, just so you guys at home know, what happened was I don't need to ask people ahead of time when I bring them up on stage. I'm going to say that's a pretty daring thing to do. But number one, I trust in the universe, and I trust that I always have the right answer. And not that I'm always right, but I've been doing this long enough that I can jam with anybody and get them to say, oh my God, I got to write that down. That means I did something good for them. So ask me what I do.
What do you do, Forbes?
I'm a realtor. What's your reaction when I say that?
Oh boy.
Right. And because I don't know that you're in real estate,
Right.
but you're like, oh my God. But why do you just say that? Or I help people with real estate.
Or I'd say, you kind of look like a realtor, Forbes. I could see that. You look like a luxury real estate agent.
Right. Well, that's nice. That's a nice compliment. But what if I said, hey, Jimmy, as somebody who moved from house to house, I specialize in helping first-time home buyers. Do you know something about me? And now you're like, oh, that's cool, Forbes. I'm in real estate as well. We have something to talk about. Or that's good for you and I can move on.
Right.
So if somebody says, what do you do? What do you say?
It depends on how much I want to have the conversation, to be honest. So it's funny because if I don't want to have a conversation,
Right.
I just say, even now, even though it's not my main thing, I just go, oh, I'm in real estate, because it just ends the thing. I don't want to get into it. I don't want to go deeper, right? Sometimes they'll ask follow-up questions or whatever, but otherwise I say, I help men build community. We do it through adventure and helping each other be honest and vulnerable and in integrity.
When you just said that to me, what do you want from me?
Just maybe catch your curiosity a little bit, like, oh, wow, this guy's got some depth to him, right?
Right. So say it differently because it's not about, I don't need to know if you've got depth. You want to know. Now answer the question, what can you do for me? You just meet me. You don't have any idea who I am. I say, hey, nice to meet you. What do you do? But you hear, hey, Jimmy, what can you do for me? What would you say?
I help people find community so that they don't feel alone in this world.
I wouldn't say people. Mostly men, though. Yes.
Well,
but now
you said with you because right. I do have a women's group too.
Yes,
yeah,
you do.
So I'd say it that way to you.
So Forbes, I just started a Queen's Leadership Program, and it would be interesting to have you learn more about it.
Doesn't that feel pitchy though? That feels pitchy to me. Like as soon as I meet somebody.
Well, I don't. Again, I kind of. I have to kind of judge here.
Sure.
Well, because
you know what I mean. It's like I just feel like to me it's. And I don't know, I guess for me, I probably could pitch my program more than I do, if I'm being honest. I just don't. I just let people kind of find out. And then because I'm not ever trying to, like, I guess I'm not sure I want to go that quickly to somebody with what I'm doing and trying to get them to be a part of it.
Right, but they asked you, which I think is an interesting conversation. How about we just get to a piece of the conversation where they say, tell me more.
Sure.
I specialize in getting adults to have the most outrageous adventures and play like kids.
Well, I think one of the problems people have with networking, because I love networking.
Do you?
I love it, yeah.
Okay.
And when I network, I don't talk business though. So like the question I learned from Jim Quick, I was at a networking event with him a couple of years ago, and he asked me a question. He said, hey, so what are you excited about right now? And I was like, oh, such a better question.
That is a great question.
I was like, geez, that's so much. And immediately we got into an in-depth conversation immediately. And I was like, Tony Robbins says, you want a better conversation or you want a better answer, ask a better question.
Absolutely.
And so, Jim's question got me obsessed with asking that question or even saying, what are you working on right now? Or, what's something you're working on right now? Those two questions, what are you excited about? What are you working on right now? Get you to somebody much quicker than how are you doing or something like that.
Right. And so that's a very interesting, I can't help people ask better questions. I can't go, you should be doing better questions, which
right.
I think is a cool...
You can ask them a better question. So that's what Jim did for me, right?
Yeah, I think I've never heard that before. I'm going to have to call Jim and go, dude, you're stealing my thunder. I love this. Let's work together. But I do think when you're answering it, that you have a responsibility to be with the person who's really talking to you.
Sure.
I think, so even no matter what words you use, can we just remember that we're looking to get a reaction from a person? Here's what people do. Ask me again.
Forbes. What do you do?
Well, I help transform lives, and I've been doing this for like so many years, and it's really helped a lot of people. Did it have anything to do with? People do that all the time. They don't even look at me. They're not. It's like,
yeah. I mean, there's no enthusiasm. There's no passion behind it.
I hear
right?
this all the time,
yeah.
And I'm looking at these poor people going, "You could have such a better network if you didn't do that."
Well, 90% of what you're saying, it's not the verbal anyway. So when I was a Mormon missionary, right, I would go door to door all day for 9 to 10 hours a day. And I had one principle that got me in all the doors. It's kind of funny that you're saying this because I was doing this just naturally. I didn't know that this was a principle that I, should teach others later. But I had one theory that, and by the way, if we had missionaries in the mission that couldn't get into the doors, nobody was listening to them, the president would send me with them for the day. And they'd go to these areas that they're like, my area is different. So the expectation was you'd give 10 discussions a day. And in Mexico where I was, that was not hard to do if you were average at best. I was given most days 10 to 15, somewhere in that ballpark. I mean, all day I was getting indoors and teaching. And I mean, you can't, help anybody if you can't teach them. And so he would send me with these missionaries that said their area was wrong. The people just don't respond there. And every time I'd get in 12, 14 doors, I had one principle that worked. And I said, because I learned this because when I first got to Mexico, they couldn't understand me very well. I didn't even speak the language yet. I was trying, and I would only speak in Spanish because I was like hell-bent on learning it as quick as I could. But for about 6 weeks, they had no clue what the hell I was saying half the time. But they would always let me in the door. And I started asking them why. And people kept saying the same thing. They're like, I didn't know what you were talking about, but you were so excited to share it. I just wanted to learn more. And so my passion for sharing it, just my own enthusiasm, they didn't even know what I was saying. Many times they'd have to look at my companion who was, Mexican, right, and say, what the hell did he just say? But they still let me in because I was so excited. So I don't know what he's talking about, but if he's that excited about it, I'm going to listen.
I love that. I don't think people are that excited when they're connecting to another human, especially in a networking situation. Yeah. They get all about themselves. So one of my principles in terms of pitching, and I love hearing this, I would not want to knock on doors. That is not, I just would love to learn the lesson. How did you have enough gumption to do that? I've been so happy behind a TV camera and just selling people.
See, and most people don't want to be behind a camera. I can knock doors all day and like just keep it going because of meeting new people, and it gets me outside, whatever else. My hardest days for me are film days. I mean, you can ask my team. 2 hours behind a camera, I'm exhausted. I don't know why, but like when I get behind the camera, I think like behind a camera, you know this, you have to give about 150% of your normal energy to make it feel like 100 to the audience.
Right.
So you really are pushing hard when you're trying to pitch behind a camera.
Well, it's very funny because I grew up as I didn't talk about this on stage, a very awkward, ugly little girl. And so I didn't have a whole lot of friends growing up. So I had to really learn the human connection skills, but you give me a hairbrush and a mirror and I can accept an Academy Award all day long. And that's how this whole thing started, is I was just imagining the people I was talking to because I had imaginary friends. I'm like, I'm happy to talk to you. Who are you? But oh, look at you, you're smiling. And I would get so excited by somebody who doesn't exist. Okay, I'm weird. I can't believe I just revealed that in public.
It's okay. No, well, and here's what people don't understand is how many of the great speakers or orators or just people that are honestly even just good at networking, how much we just fake the game a little bit. When I walk in a room, I can decide how that night's going to go and if I'm going to connect based 100% on the attitude I decide to take. I had a friend taught me this. He said, Jimmy, where people get in trouble in networking situations, I think this is really important because a lot of people don't like networking because they don't know how to do it. And they get in their head and they start thinking about what these people are thinking about them. He said, there's one way to make sure you connect with everyone in the room. He said, be self-amused. Everything you do, just be thinking in your mind, I'm just going to entertain myself with everything I do tonight. Being self-amused puts you in a playful state, and that's a great place to meet people from.
I love that. I'm also going to honor you for Tim Tebow's event. Oh my God, I'm just thinking about going into an event, not quite sure what to expect. And I walk into the room and everybody's jumping and yelling and screaming. And all the people that you brought, and even my friend Chip just was out there dancing the entire night. And I got hugs from people who I don't know that I would have ever met otherwise. It was a very special night.
It was a special night.
Yeah, you did really good. You touched my heart.
Well, it's the same thing. Just as soon as I got there, and people do this at all dances. When I first got out there, nobody was dancing. And I just started dancing. I said, okay, I'm just going to start dancing my night away. And it's self-amused.
Yes.
You dance as if you're the only one in the room. And it's so attractive because everybody deep down is like, oh, I want to be that free in my energy. I want to be able to dance without giving a shit what anybody thinks.
Self-amused.
And so the second they see it, they like start doing it as well. And next thing you know, the whole room is just dancing.
You had the whole room dancing. You made these little kids feel so proud. I'm talking to a couple of the moms because I was just dancing there. Like the mom was like, oh my God, I looked you up and I'm so excited that you danced with my daughter. And I'm like, it's my honor. It is my honor because you're an extraordinary mom.
Yeah.
And then I got very, very grateful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful night, and it's such a fun way to. Look at kids with Down syndrome. They're such a perfect example of this. They're self-amused. They're in a playful state. That's why it's very hard not to be in a good mood around them. Like if you're not in a good mood around a kid with Down syndrome, you're the problem.
I didn't really think I understood it. I have a couple of friends who've got kids with Down syndrome. I've never been in a playful situation like that, and was wonderful.
Yeah, they're not worried about themselves. They're not worried what anyone thinks.
No, and they
they're
love to dance.
They're very present. Mm-hmm.
That was mind blowing. So good on you, my brother. I was so excited about that. I was about everything. And then Chris showed up, and I don't take notes anymore. I'm like writing notes. What is it? I'd never heard him before.
Chris Williamson.
Yeah. He doesn't look British. He looks like a surfer dude. And he said something about the price that you pay for inaction right now could absolutely make me cry. Because there are things that I want to do that I'm not doing. And I'm like, oh, I'll get to it. But I didn't think about the price that it cost me to not do it. And that just been resonating with me all morning long.
Yeah, we're very good at weighing the cost of when we do something, but we don't take into account very well the inaction or the things that we don't do, the cost of that, right? And he said it brilliantly. He talked about too, and he said, one of my favorite, he read that, it's almost like a poem of what action is and what action isn't. He's like, action is not talking about taking action. Action is not planning to take action. Action is not reading about how to take action. Right. It's like you take action. And there's a thing, I think it was one of the themes of the weekend, is because I've been saying this for the last couple of months on my podcast over and over again, but all these successful people I get to be around. I mean, in the last month, I've interviewed the best baseball pitcher of all time, Ed Milet, #1 speaker in the planet. I mean, just person after person, right? Like they all have the same thing in common. They just take action. They don't need all the answers. They don't need to know that it's going to work out. They're willing to let it just kind of develop as they go, but they take action. And that is that quality. And so Ed said when we were doing the Q&A from the stage, he said their ability to just send it and go for it, not needing to know how it's going to turn out.
And I think it's real important for everyone listening to also know that everybody up there overcame massive issues, massive reasons to not do anything, massive father issues. Father was the big theme that. And it was like, whoa, that was very impressive. I didn't know how, again, it's a male energy that you're bringing out and you invoke this spirit because I think half of our dads are all dead. It's like, this is like, wow. God, I learned so much. I really did. I'm just like, very happy.
Well, I love that, you said that you remember where you were at when you first got inspired at one of these events. Mm-hmm. Same thing, right? And it's the reason I throw these events. I mean, they're just a value add for my clients. It's not a moneymaker for me. It's a I take a loss to do the event. But there's something about when you get in the room, you connect with the right person, you hear the message in a way that everybody always says, I feel like he was speaking just to me. It's because you are getting personal revelation or personal downloads for your life because you put yourself in the room. You can't get that from YouTube. You can't get that from watching it online.
Oh, no.
And so that's the whole reason these events are so powerful, is because when you're in the room, you get that inspiration for the things in your life, your business, your family, your friends, whoever that might be.
Well, what's important to know too, because as you move forward in your events, you can do the 10,000 person event. I've spoken at those. And one of the issues was it's wild to do it, but it was a little lonely. It was so many people, there was nobody. Mm-hmm. Here, even I think Erwin came off and said, wow, there's like an intimacy in the room that you can feel. Like I got on stage and it was like, I can see everybody.
Yeah, you can almost see every person's face if you look around the room.
Yes, and they were very present and very lovely. I don't know that I've had an event like this.
Yeah, I was proud of the room. I was a little bit nervous on a Saturday. People would be antsy, people would be moving around, and I kept like waiting and nobody was leaving. No, everyone was right there dialed in. Nobody was on their phones. I mean, yeah, I was very happy with it.
Because you had quality speakers. You gave them just enough time, but not too much time, which is great because we can all get a little boring and carried away with ourselves. And I loved it. And then your documentary, dude, when is that coming out?
Yeah, it'll be out here. By the time this podcast hits, it'll be out. The only thing I'm waiting on is actually tell the story. It's kind of interesting. I've got some pretty sensitive stuff on the documentary. It's from basically what it is I've been trying to be able to document these events that I'm hosting with the guys, when we go 50 at a time and we spend a weekend together. And they're very intimate and sacred. And a lot of things are shared that are very much need to stay in the container. So I've been trying to put this documentary together that captures the whole weekend, but there are some things that are a little bit sensitive, and I took out anything that was, in my opinion, too sensitive. But my opinion doesn't matter if it's too sensitive to the person that shared it. I wanted to honor them. So I'm getting permission from about a dozen people to share their part. So I've shared it with them. The documentary's done, but I'm trying to get their feedback and make sure they're okay with it before I put it out. And I actually learned this about a month ago. One of my guys came to me and we were doing this exercise, and I was trying to basically help one of the guys share some real emotion about a situation, and he wasn't getting there, and I was really pressing him. And one of the other guys that was there with us, he's like, "Hey, do you care if I share something? Like, I want to try this." And I was like, "Yeah, who with?" He goes, "With you." And he was upset with me because I'd shared something that he told me, and I didn't say it by name, but I did share something that it was a year and a half ago. And he was really mad at me, and he'd never told me that he was upset about that. And even as he was mad at me, I could feel myself wanting to defend it, or because I didn't say by name,
I got it.
But people knew what, and I knew in my heart though, even when I did it, that I was oversharing. And in that moment with him, instead of defending myself, because I could have played dumb, I could have defended myself. And I said, "Dude, I actually remember I know exactly what you're talking about. I remember when I did it, and I remember feeling wrong about it at the time."
Well, but
I'm so sorry.
You and I went really deep when we first met. I do a lot of traumatic healing. And people don't know that. It's not, they see me as the infomercial host, the pitch queen, but I have this other side of my career and my business that I love. And we have a very sacred thing that we do as well. And I was watching this and I was thinking, wow, would I ever have enough courage to put what I did out there to the world? Because every third person that I talked to has been sexually molested in a drastic way. Most recently, this one happened, and you go, "Can I share this?" So first you go, "Okay, as long as there's no names, that's cool." And I certainly always ask permission. But I've just recently encountered a woman who was at my house at a VIP dinner, and very sweet woman, and she'd have me share her name, but I won't. She works with suicidal kids in Colorado and school shootings. And you kind of have to put that together going, that's a pretty dramatic thing that you do. Well, she then said, "I've never been kissed." I'm like, "You're 54 years old." She's like, "I've never been kissed, because if I get kissed, I don't know where it's going to go." And I'm like waiting for the other shoe to drop. And she looked at me, she's like, "Forbes, could you do what you do on me?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, it's a dinner." Yeah, let's all go to the living room. If you're going to get triggered by this, I suggest you go out. And 2 people did leave the room because there's a little bit of yelling and screaming. Yeah. She was ritualistically raped by a neighbor of hers who had them sleep over. And then there were 12 guys all night long on this little 12-year-old. And then the last guy said, "You're never going to forget me when you have sex again." I would say to most therapists, they would run. And somehow Spirit just said, this is your job. This is what you're here on this planet to do. Of all the things that you really do, Forbes, this is it. And we did my procedure, my thing that I do. It takes about 30 minutes, a little yelling and screaming and whatever, and breaking through. It's called a breakthrough. She looked up at me at the end of this with his eyes that were bluer than I've ever seen blue. Like it was like, wow, what did just released from you? And she said, I love how you and Joshua are together. Would you come and dance at my wedding? I'm ready. Like, I'll never forget that. And I love the fact that she let me share that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, that's what I've learned. I've had so many of these magical moments. I mean, just special moments with these guys. And I've been very careful never to share names, but I realize there is another level that I need to get of consent from them. And sometimes I know it's fine, but there's other ones that just because it's sacred as much as anything. And so anyways, the documentary is ready, but I got about half the guys that, there's about 12 guys I need permission. 6 of them already gave it. The other ones, I sent them the documentary to watch it and just make sure they're good. And if they are, we'll put it out next week. If they're not, we go fix it, change some things, take some things out, and we'll put it out that way.
David also went deep. Man, I got it. Like I said, people who I'm just listening to, I wouldn't leave your green room.
Yeah,
normally,
I mean, his keynote speech. You see this 6'4" football player. He just looks like a Greek model.
Yes.
And one of the first things he talks about all the time, he's very open about. He talks about being sexually molested as a kid.
I know.
It's part of it. It's his whole keynote that he gives every time he speaks.
Oh, he's like, I'm part of Jimmy's keynote. He was like so proud of himself. But the work that he does, because I also met Travis Mills, who's lost his arms and legs through an explosion in service, and I have a spin gym with a gentleman who has no arms and no legs, called Pedro. He uses his hooks, and it's one of my proudest things that Pedro thought this was really cool. And I'm like, I didn't know even that you existed. Like, I can't wait to support what he's up to.
That's incredible. Yeah, I mean, I was you said there was a flow to the event. I was very particular about who I would have there. It's very special to me to have, the right flow. And I think a lot of times people just throw an event together, they kind of get whoever they can get, or like whoever kind of can show up. But even I started each day with the speaker I did because I know how much energy they bring to a room. Right. Ben Kerr, who's in my program, you won't get a guy that'll pump more energy into a room than that guy. He had the whole place, people ready to run through a wall, And so I started the event with that because that energy will go for, hours afterwards.
Well, but I also think something that I've never seen before, and this is just you, and I'm going to just honor you and hopefully embarrass him, is that every speaker had a personal connection to you. That doesn't happen. Like you said, we just bring in speakers. Somebody talks about Instagram. Somebody talks about this. Somebody talks about that. That's not what happened here. It was the Jimmy Rex show. It was that the spokes of Jimmy, that everyone who's touched your heart for whatever reason or moved you personally is somebody you wanted to share with your audience. Mm-hmm. And that's what it felt like.
Well, one of the best gifts we can give to people, I talk about this with my men in the program, is like when again, 4 years ago when I finally become the #1 realtor in Utah, and I had at the same time I had my big investment, come to fruition, and a bunch of other things happen. I didn't ever have to work again if I wanted. If I chose that route, I was done. Like I could do whatever I wanted. But my first book, my second book, the first one that's not like a real book, but it's called You End Up Where You're Heading, The Hidden Dangers of Living a Safe Life. And it's all about the hero's journey. And on that journey, what do you do after you hit the peak?
Wait, say the name of that book again.
You End Up Where You're Heading, The Hidden Dangers of Living a Safe Life.
Okay.
And we go through the hero's journey.
Right.
And part of the journey is when you come back down the mountain, you have to share it with others. Yes. That's the whole point. So part of that's where I was in my journey was, okay, I'm on my way back down the mountain. It's now my job to share all these things. And that's why it was so easy
that's where I am right now.
Yeah, well, it was so easy to do We Are the They, because all I did is I took everything I'd learned over the last 15 years and I said, if I just take all the best parts, every event I throw, it's just all the best things I learned at different events. I've put them all into this condensed version. And because I went to so many damn things, read so many books, know so many people, I have a lot of material. So I have 2.5 years that is just a accumulation of the 15 years of my life, the best things that I learned. And so the same thing with my relationships. So an event like this, I say, okay, which people have had a huge impact on me that I know will impact my audience? And so everybody there, it's why they have a personal connection, is because they're people that have impacted my life. But that's all I'm doing is, they say that, sometimes the best marketing is just copying somebody else. And there's a word that Erwin uses. He says, I don't copy others, I model others. So you model the things that you've seen work, right? Like all of my different exercises we do at my events, they're a form of another exercise I've done. I've put it into my own model or my own thing, but I've essentially just seen the things that work. And so all of the parts of We Are that they literally all just come from things that I've learned from somebody else.
Now, when I first met you, it was only men. Are we now into the queen thing? Talk to me about this.
Yeah, I mean, it was actually Melissa who inspired me with this. It was interesting because I did not want to do women's group. I actually talked to several of the guys that I know that have 2 or 3 of the biggest men's groups across the country, and they said the women's groups all fell apart that they tried doing. There's a lot of reasons for that, but they all warned me not to do it. And I started looking at it and I said, the men are already paying to be a part of this. If their wives are having it, it's just a lot of money. I don't know if they'll be able to afford it. And I was just very hesitant. And Melissa kept saying, she said, look, if you don't bring the women along, there's going to be a gap between each couple. You have to do something for the women. And I said, well, I don't think a lot of people don't have the money for it. So I started a free Queens version. It started out as.
Okay.
And my whole point was like, and I was wanting to have Melissa wanted to be more in our world. I wanted to have her more in our world. She's amazing. She's the best one-on-one coach I've ever met. And I brought her in to basically run this free Queens version. And it's interesting though, like, this, when you give people stuff for free, a lot of times they just don't see the value. And I'm trying to just provide as much value as I can.
Isn't it fun?
But a lot of the wives don't buy in because and I get it, their husbands are the ones that signed up for the program, not them. Right. Like they didn't really want this, per se. So I get it. But also there was some women that were really dying to go to the next level and to really make it more like the men's group. And so eventually, after about a year of the free version, I realized if I made them commit financially, it was going to be a different level of commitment. Mm-hmm. And the women that wanted that would all be able to benefit from that. So we put, the women all pay $200 a month now, which is everybody can afford that if they make it a priority, period. There's nobody that can't. And if they can't, we can talk. We'll figure something out. They can wrap my Christmas presents or some shit. Whatever. There's ways to get in the group, right?
I love it.
And so the point is and it is cool because we've had a different level of commitment since we did that. And then for the women, per event, they pay to go do the event, as opposed to the men, it's more of a subscription each month. And it's working really well. But the women, one of the things that I knew, and eventually I want to find the right, fit for the women to run themselves without me being there. But I started thinking, I don't know anybody that runs events better than me. And I know how to teach all these different concepts. And I know a lot of amazing women that I can bring on these calls. And so I'm in our last 3 calls. I've had 3 of the top, female influencers in the world.
Who did you have on?
I had Jen Gottlieb.
Love Jen.
Amberly Lago. The week we had her on, she was on Ed Milet's podcast. Mm-hmm. And then had Akemi Fisher, who's sold billions of dollars on Amazon. Just an amazing human. But my point is,
I miss all these people from Clubhouse. That was my jam.
Oh, really?
Clubhouse doesn't exist anymore, man. I hung out with the best people.
I'm so glad. I almost had an opportunity to invest, and I was going to put $500,000 into Clubhouse. Because remember when it first popped? Everybody was on all day. Yeah. The problem they had is you couldn't record it. There was nowhere to go back and listen to it. So as an influencer, you spend an hour or 2 hours on, but there's no...
They did add that feature at some point. That's
did they? By the time I went, I was gone by then already. Right. But why did it go under then?
I don't know. I have no idea why. All I know is I woke up one day and they changed the entire format. And now it's like a walkie-talkie system and they have a little bit of... They took everything. I had 65,000 followers. I woke up, there was 2. I'm like... That's not a very good platform here.
Yeah, no, I was on it pretty early too, and I was excited, and we had some fun conversations. But I just remember it wasn't recorded, so it was just I just wasted an hour.
Well, I actually started recording mine outside of that because I would teach, and I'm like, this is really good stuff.
Right? Yeah,
and it's a weird thing for me as a woman because I have to put on hair, makeup, clothes, whatever. I was sitting there in the green room. I'm teaching a speaker training right now. It's like week 3, and I'm literally using your event to teach my training right now. So as I was watching, Damon West was first, and he went over his time. Now, I came to find out that you'd given him extra time, but that wasn't the point. The point was I literally said to my guys, look, this is the first speaker on day 1 of events. Your event planner he's got a schedule like this. Don't do this minus thing. And then I went to, who was the second one? We were just talking
Keaton.
About... Well, Keaton was great. He
was the second speaker.
He was amazing, but I was going to make a point about other things that we learned about being on that stage. And I don't know because I'm so excited to talk to you. Who knows? That is a great point. Anyway, we're doing a speaker training, which I'm loving because I also love having them backstage to go, look, the different styles of speakers. Oh, now I know what I was going to say. So Ed Milet gets up there. We all love Ed, right? Ed's the best. And then I'm going, you guys, here's what really sucks. See that T-shirt and pair of jeans? I can't wear that. No matter what happens, if I went out in a T-shirt and pair of jeans like that he is rocking, you would look at me going, what's wrong with Forbes? So I got to use a lot of my little my little points, and you really don't think about it when you're a man versus a woman about speaking on stages. By the way, your two women looked so good, didn't they?
They did. No, it was perfect. You know, it's interesting. I wish it was, maybe this is a limiting belief that I have, but I've tried to get a lot of women on the stages. They're very difficult. They don't want to take the stages. It's more rare for women, at least in this world of self-development. It's been really hard for me to find women that will get on the stage. I mean, even when I asked the audience, I asked for people to share their experience.
I did.
We had 3 guys jump up, and I couldn't get any women. We finally basically pulled one on the stage to talk, but they don't want to do it.
I met one of those women out in the hallway, and she was like, I couldn't do it. I was too afraid. I'm like, oh, come here. Can I just like hug you and coach you a little bit? Because that limiting belief, you are beautiful, you've got a business, you're our mom, you deserve to be on stage.
I know. I wanted several to go, but it's very difficult to get them to do it. It's very interesting to me. I'm trying to help fix that, I guess you could say, or make that different. Send them on an adult mission for 2 years and make them knock on doors. Yeah, that helps. Yeah.
So anything else you want to know?
Well, you know what's funny? I'll tell you a quick story. It's kind of funny. The only time so women in general, I think they very much, they're always comparing each other to each other, and they're very competitive in different ways.
Well, you know why? Because you guys got to play football, and we did beauty pageants.
Of course, I know.
Can you imagine?
Well, so listen to this. So this is funny. So I used to do a date auction every year to raise money for charity. And the first year I did it, I was having the hardest time. I mean, I was only asking the most beautiful. I was trying to get the women that you're not going to get a date with otherwise, because I knew I'd get more money if we could auction off a date with them.
Right.
So I'm asking, I mean, we're talking like the 10 out of 10s of the entire state of Utah is all the women that were basically untouchable that were single. I'm asking them if they'll be a part of my date auction. And about 12 of them say yes. Right. And then all of a sudden, one by one, they all start telling me, they start texting me. And these are the most beautiful women in Utah. Every one of them is like, I don't feel like I can be on that stage, or there's the women are so beautiful. I'm like, these women are insane. And then, you know what's funny? The only 3 women that were like gung-ho to do it, because I begged them. I got them all to stay in it, and we've raised over $30,000 for 15 women. It was amazing, like crazy. The only women that were gung-ho were the 3 that did beauty pageants. They were all about it. They were just like, couldn't have enough of it. All the rest of the women, they were so not used to being able to just go up and they were beautiful women, and they just were not comfortable doing it. It was very fascinating to me.
There's 2 things going on. One, we didn't play team sports. A lot of women, and we do compare. We're taught to compare. Oh, she's prettier than I am. Do you guys? I don't think you guys do that, do you?
I mean, you know when guys are better looking, but as a guy, you're like, that fine, I'll just be funnier. I'll be
richer.
More, I'll have more money.
Successful.
Yeah, there's different things that attract the opposite sex for men and women, and it is.
So I also had a great moment, and thank you for letting me do this, but I brought Joshua on stage. I don't normally ever do that.
For the audience that doesn't know you, who's Joshua?
Oh, sorry. So Joshua is my husband. I've known him for 7 years. If you go to joshuaself.esi on Instagram, you're liable to see a man that he looks a lot like Thor and Superman had a baby, which would be weird. But, well, when I met him, he wasn't quite as buff. He was a fashion model at some point. He's a 3D graphic artist, was a Chippendale at some point. And basically, he's a videographer who happens to have this body. And he loves to compete. But he doesn't have any desire to show this. Like, he'll walk around in his big coat and he looks like everyone else. And I was like, come on, take your shirt off. Because he's got like these shoulders are like, dude, you work so hard. Don't you want to show that off? He's like, I'll just do it on stage and I'm fine. I'm like, if I look like you, I'd be an action hero. I would be, I don't know. I've never met anyone like him. And so I said, look, you got this really cool opportunity. They flew him out to California. One of his idols, he's a 2-time Arnold Classic winner. Arnold Classic is one of the biggest bodybuilding competitions. Right. He's also a Mr. Olympia winner. He's also, though, when I met him, because I'm all about the story, and I'm going to continue to do this to help people who don't see themselves in the story of success. He was a beautiful human being, right? Played a pretty small game, though, work-wise, but he was a fashion model, and he was a fitness guy, all those things, right? 4 years ago, COVID, January 4th, he's on his motorcycle, and a kid creams him, shatters his foot, his back, his ribs, and he's in a wheelchair for 6 months as COVID's happening. He shrinks down to nothing. I love him no matter what. I didn't fall in love with him because of his body. And he gets up with his crutch and he says, take a picture of me in June. I'm like, why? He's like, take a picture of me. And then he said, when the gyms open up, I'm going back. I haven't finished. I'm going to get another Mr. Olympia title. And I'm like, oh, dear God. You know what? Using his system, and he does have a very cool system that he created, he built back. Then he gets on stage and he limps and he loses big time. He's never lost a competition ever. This man's heart was shattered. And I know you know, and I don't really know how men deal with things. Like, as a woman, I only know so much. Like, you only know so much about being a woman.
Sure. But
he said, I'm quitting. It's fine. And then he did a Tom Brady. 2 days later, he said, that's not good enough for me. I'm going back. And so I, as this, I guess to be voice and role model for people, and I love doing that, witnessed, I never saw this before, someone get up every day who was in raging pain. He's had 2 surgeries on his ankle. He'll never walk right. And say, I'm going to go to the gym every day, even though he's suffering. Like, that's what a champion does. And I've never witnessed them. Like, my family played really small. Like, dude, you're like a world champion. And I'm watching you of what it really takes behind the scenes, of what you have to eat, of what you have to think, of what you have to sacrifice to make this happen. He gets back on stage and he wins Mr. Olympia. That was like 2 years ago. And then he just said to himself, I got to go back to Arnold one more time. So he's always had that Arnold thing. And Arnold just came out with a great documentary. Well, we get a phone call from my agent in LA about, I don't know, a month ago, who says they're doing a State Farm commercial for the Super Bowl. And Arnold is 70 years old. They would like to go back in time and see Arnold young. Can we use Joshua's body as Arnold's? Oh my gosh. I don't think I've ever seen him happier. So in the Super Bowl, which is happening live today, you won't see his face, but you will see his body.
Wow.
And so I thought we would just honor him and celebrate it and have some fun with it.
That's kind of fun.
Yeah. And then I think what I got from that is I got a lot of people saying to me, you guys have a beautiful relationship. I never had one of those before. It's been 7 years and I am who I am now. Very different who I was 7 years ago. Mm. And I think every year it gets better because somebody loves me that much. I mean, I love him, but I got to tell you, having somebody cherish you and having you be the center of their universe, very, very different.
Mm. So how do you create that, I guess?
You fall in love with you. Ironically, that's the first that happens. Everyone's like, well, I want to find my partner. I want to go 50-50. Well, it's not. It's 100. It's 100. And so what happened for me was I had gone through, my marriage fell apart because we raised a little boy who was murdered.
Your son was murdered?
Bonus son. Didn't give birth to him, but raised Dexter for 12 years of his life. He was best man at my wedding. He came to us through the Big Brother, Little Brother program and became part of my family.
Oh, wow.
And so I helped raise him. When my kids, my twins were born, they were 6 months old. He was walking from a haircut to church right outside of USC. And a gang member just walked up behind him and shot him 10 times in the back and left him for dead on the sidewalk.
Wow.
Dexter never had any tattoos, never did anything wrong. He was just a sweet, lumbering kind of big guy. And he and my husband were like literally brothers. And what's so beautiful about witnessing this story, which is why I feel compelled to tell stories, is Dexter was as dark as this table. And Tom is 6'6", my ex-husband, and white as a ghost. Like he is the white. And he'd walk around with Dexter and this is my little brother. And I watched how that evolved as a relationship and just all the things that we did. And best man at my wedding. And wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to me that, and when that ended, a lot of things ended. He and I, my husband and I were both on autopilot. We were raising 2 kids. I was working. So here's a question for you as a guy who runs guys groups. I came home every day because I was the breadwinner then. My ex is a chef and loves kids and took care of the babies while I went out and did QVC and flew around the world. And I would come home and I'm like, I slayed the dragon. I've got money and I've got this. And he'd go, here's your dinner. Here's a baby. Go bathe the baby. And I would then say to him, come on, let's go to the bedroom. And he would say, I have laundry to do. And I'm looking at this 6'6" and I'm kind of losing a little bit of respect for this man who was my man.
Of course.
Then I would come home and if you just metaphorically, I'm a Taurus, he's a Leo. I'd come home in my masculine, he'd be in his masculine, and boom, it was like the earthquake of 94. You know what I never did, Jimmy? And no one told me to do this. I never came home as the little girl. Mm-hmm. I never came home as the woman. I never did it. Mm-hmm. I didn't even think about taking my armor off. The crazy thing about Joshua when he met me, Forbes is my maiden name. My original given name was Francine Forbes. Mm-hmm. And then I got married. And I love my name. I think it's kind of cool. Joshua said to me, don't come home as Forbes Riley. Leave her at the door. She's kind of a bossy babe. She gets shit done. I want my Francine. And I'm like, dude, how did you even know to ask me that? So when I come home, I literally take off my clothes from the day and I put on my fuzzy fun things and I crawl into his arms and I ask him how he is. And so I had to become better.
Well, you said something that I don't want to skip over because David Dita, he's the guy he wrote the book on how to help women get into their feminine, which is by the man needs to be in his masculine. Because here's one thing about all humans. All human behavior is one simple thing. People will do whatever they need to feel safe, period. And if a woman doesn't feel safe with the man in every aspect, emotionally, financially, spiritually, physically, then she has to go to part of her masculine to get there. She will. She has to.
Oh, wow.
So the way you said I needed to get out of my feminine, but the problem is it's up to the man to get the woman there. The masculine has to, whether, whatever, in every couple there's a masculine and feminine, but the masculine has to hold that space and make it safe enough so that the feminine can just go there.
Well, I'll push that a little bit.
And Josh did that for you. That's what he did. He made it safe for you to just go there. Whereas your other husband, God bless him, he's innocent. People don't even know this, but him, just the way he was showing up, he was doing what he needed to do to feel safe, right? And somewhere in his life, he was rewarded for those behaviors, but he was probably, it's okay for the man to go to the feminine, but if you live there, you're just going to depolarize from your partner. You're not going to have the attraction. You're just going to lose attraction for each other.
Do you talk about this? So that side is cool, but no one ever told me that there was these kind of energies.
Yeah, I think it's more common. I mean, Tony Robbins is, and David Dieter, the two guys that talk about it the most. I think Tony studied under David. But either way, those two talk about it, relentlessly. And it's just, they just have a brilliant way of doing it. And Tony, he's coached the top female business women that have ever lived. Right. I mean, literally. I mean, he coaches the who's who, like the Oprahs and everyone else. And he told me, he said, I've never coached a woman that deep down didn't want a masculine to just hold her so she could just fall into her Francine, her feminine.
Yeah.
Because you're a good example of this. You're about as hard charging. I mean, on the stage, I'm like, she's a little bit masculine sometimes out there. But that's when you're playing the pitch person. And even you, like who every woman would see and be like, oh, that's a woman that lives a lot in her masculine. Even you're sitting here telling me that all you wanted was to be in your little feminine.
All right, but then there's the flip side, and maybe you can take this into your Queen's training. I grew up when I reading fairy tales, right? Disney. And at some point I woke up in the business world and said, screw Disney. He's terrible. He's a horrible man. By the way, one of your speakers pointed that out, didn't they? Who was it who said that?
He said he hated Disney. I think it was Chris Williamson.
Yeah, I think he said just a picture of Disney. Yeah. But here's what he did. He killed mothers. So Bambi and Dumbo and those people don't have mothers. He made stepmothers evil. So I'm like, well, that's kind of not so cool. And made these beautiful princesses who all had tiny little waists. They all were pretty blonde with their long hair. And they're waiting to be saved by a guy. And at some point in my little feminism world, I'm like, well, that's horrible. I'm not going to wait for some guy to save me. Well, a couple of things happened. One, remember when the movie Shrek came out? Mm-hmm. There was something pretty amazing that happened for me. So Shrek's played by Cameron Diaz, who's that typical blonde, gorgeous person that I never was. And so Shrek's going to kiss his true love, and then she's going to turn into what she's supposed to be. And he kisses her, and you open your eyes, and she's a green ogre who farts. I'm like, oh, and I'm literally in the theater going, yes! Sorry. That's so cool. So I love that you didn't have to conform. That was the first time I was given permission to go, it might be okay to be different, which is now what 2020 is all about. But then when I met Joshua, I'm like, do I want to be, you're right. Do I want to be held and saved? And I kind of do. And does that make me any less? And the answer is no. I think it makes me more.
No, I mean, a woman's power is her feminine energy. Like, that is the power of a woman. It's not when, Chris said this brilliantly on our podcast we did the other day. He said that there's this lie that's being told where women are trying to, be their fathers or be the breadwinner and all these different things, be their brother. And they're giving up their power, because that's not what makes a woman powerful. The power is, they have much more power than the man, but they have to be tapped into that feminine energy. Now, again, they're all innocent because we will do whatever we need to feel safe. And so if they've been abused, if they haven't had a strong father figure or brothers or a husband or a boyfriend that takes care of them and makes them feel safe, then they have to, unfortunately, go more and more into that energy. Everybody, all men should go to their feminine all the time. You see my group, we cry. We'll go there all day, but you can't live there, because I was telling one of the guys this. He said, a girl told me she loses attraction when she sees a guy cry. I said, no, here's what happens. A woman will lose attraction if the guy cries and doesn't get up afterwards and go solve the problem, because you can go to your feminine energy. The woman wants you to feel your emotions. Healthy emotions are beautiful, but you can't stay there, because the feminine's like, wants to kind of be rescued, like you said, like the princess. The masculine then goes, the guy needs to then, okay, I've had my moment. Now I'm going to get my shit together. I'm going to go solve this problem, because that's what a man does. And you go, and whether you do or don't, you're hell bent on trying to. That's where the attraction comes back, because the woman goes, damn, my dude can go to this place, can fall apart on the floor, but he's going to get up and take it. Because why? Because she can feel safe with him, because she knows even if he falls apart, he's going to go fix the problem. And so she can stay in her feminine because he is making her feel safe.
But I also think this education is important, because I don't think a lot of women are taught any of this. And especially now that we are breadwinners and entrepreneurs and we can make money without a man, we are not taught to be feminine. So where does that education come in?
It's the pendulum swinging because women are figuring it out. All these women got deceived by the feminist movement. They got deceived by, the media telling them these lies that like, you'll be happier without a man. You'll be happier, in the workplace. You won't. Like, I'm sorry, but like for the majority of women.
Well, okay. Can we just actually stop because you're in 2024? Can we just say happy with a partner? Because I think there's a whole...
No, because I think it's okay to be honest that there's genders. Like, and I say masculine and feminine energy. I'm just saying man and woman because it's a lot easier. Like gay couples and everything else. Every gay couple has a masculine and feminine.
I got that.
So I'm just saying men and women in the sense that the masculine and the feminine is just easier. Word twisting gets tricky, right? And so it's like, I do believe very strongly in gender roles and all those things. I'm very comfortable using them as man and woman. So
so I just saw an exercise that I want to do with you. I want to come in and do a queen thing where all the guys, it's called a stretch, where all the guys have to run around in tutus and do their little dancing thing and all the girls are in tuxedo. No, but I'm not. Look at that. No. Did you guys already go, no, we're not doing that. We did this as a stretch because we took guys who were very masculine to see what their feminine was and in the same vein, have the women be as masculine and see what mixes it up for them.
There's ways to do that, I think, but I do think that, I don't think that men should put dresses on, and if they're not trying to live in that energy, I was just being honest. Like I actually see part of being in your masculine is I don't give a shit what you want to do or what you think society wants me to say. Like I'm going to do what I believe, and that is masculine. Like
I just want to see a guy walking in a pair of high heels, not for the girl boy part, to just know how uncomfortable my life is. Okay, and then
how about this? We'll have them carry a fake baby around on their stomach or something, like a 10-pound bag of flour.
On them. Yes,
sure.
Do the lips, and it's an appreciation. That's all.
Yeah, no, and I think there's other ways to figure that out. But
the conversation is open now, guys.
Let's go. All the bad ideas. Let's get them all out, Forbes. What else do we not want to know? I'm just kidding.
I probably have a couple.
No, and by the way, one of the things I do with my group is I'm constantly looking for ways to make them uncomfortable. Yeah. But we throw them off a cliff, or I make them hold an anaconda snake, or swim with Komodo dragons, or walk across hot coals. Cold plunge in a frozen lake. Like we do all those things because there is value in being uncomfortable. And I actually encourage my guys. So one of the part of my courses is I have them go do something they'd never do. And a lot of the guys last year, they went to it was an event for trans people in Utah. Okay. And these are very conservative men, very church-going men. And they went and, I was really proud of them for going to the event. I don't want them to dress like trans women, but they went to the event and they had a new appreciation and understanding of those people, of trans people that they probably didn't have before. So I think versatility, my real estate mentor, Mike Ferry, he used to say, Jimmy, the number one quality you can have if you want to be the best at anything is versatility, because you can relate to everybody. So like I go to all these countries and I participate in these different things. I've done all the different religious rituals with the different, organizations and all these different things, because I do think versatility is an absolute superpower, but you don't have to go, I don't have to sleep with a man to understand gay people. You know what I mean? Like there's a difference between like going all in on it versus putting yourself in the position to understand.
I just love that you're doing all this and that you're driven to do this. Can I just ask you a question? So in terms of real estate and stuff and all your success, what do you attribute that to?
A couple things. Number one is I had a huge why when I started. I had a failed meat company and I had $120,000 debt when I started real estate. Okay. And I was hell-bent on getting rid of that. I thought this is going to ruin me forever. Nobody's ever going to want to date me. Like this is a problem. And so I was just worked my ass off. The second thing is I had the work ethic because I was a Mormon missionary. So I knew how to pound the doors for 80 hours a week. I had no problem working 80 hours doing the tough work, which is pounding phones, pounding doors.
Yeah.
And then the third one is I had amazing mentors. I absolutely found, I got lucky. The 6 months into the business, I'd sold 4 homes. I didn't know what I was doing. I was horrible. And 6 months in, I found Mike Ferry, who I didn't know at the time, but he was the #1 real estate agent trainer ever. Oh, wow. And he became a personal mentor of mine. And I mean, my first 2 months with him, I sold 60 houses. I went from 4 in 6 months to 6.
I've never heard of him.
Yeah, no, in the real estate world, everyone knows him, but like in the real estate agent world, he's the guy. And but his system was perfect because he used to teach Mormon missionaries. His whole system is pound the phones, pound the doors for 4 hours a day. If you do that, know your scripts, memorize them, get good at doing them. He basically would say, sales is easy, guys. You learn what to say, you learn how to say it, you say it all day. And that was his whole philosophy. But he was so good at the accountability piece and the skills piece. So I could get on the phone with anybody. You couldn't give me a single thing you could say that I didn't have 3 answers to. And I could say it with so much confidence that it conveyed that to the seller or the buyer. And so that's why I got really good. I knew what I was doing. I was very highly skilled, and I was very consistent every day. I didn't miss making my calls for 5 years. And so I was just very consistent.
Okay, here's another question that I'm not very good at. When you have a mentor, I look at you and Ed or a couple of other people of your mentors. How do you decide what you want from them?
So to find mentors, who I hire at this point in my life is I see who is where I want to be in a certain category of life. That probably is where he used to be where I am today.
Okay.
So I say, okay, well, Ed is 52 or 53, whatever he is now. He's exactly where I would hope to be in 10 years. Okay. So I say, okay, well, he clearly probably used to be where I am.
Right.
So I said, I'm going to go hire that guy. I'm going to go get around that guy. I'm going to go learn what he did, because you can compress time by learning what they did if you truly do it. And that's one thing that Ed always says about me that he loves. He's like, dude, you're so damn coachable. You just do what I ask you to do. And I'll go, of course, because you're giving me the blueprint. So I do that with my relationship coaches. Last year I hired Neil Strauss, which if you're familiar with the book, The Game, he used to be where I was, like in the middle of the game. Like you're just playboying it up, whatever. And then he figured out his next book, The Truth, 10 years later, is about how the whole game was bullshit, and like really figured out that life is about all these other deeper connections and meaning and not the bullshit. And I'm like, damn, that dude absolutely hacked from the guy that I used to be to who I want to be now. So I hired Neil. I've been working with him since the summer. And it's been beautiful. And like I get on these calls with him, and it's really helping me. And he'll help me look at situations. I had one this summer where, I started kind of dating this girl, and I thought I handled it good because it was better than I ever had in the past.
Okay.
And so we do a check-in every Wednesday night for 2 hours. We get on a call and we do a check-in, and I'm telling him about it, and I'm kind of thinking he's going to be like, hey, you did better, good job. And he's like, let me give you a few more ways to look at that. And by the time he was done talking, I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I miss all that? I couldn't have handled it worse, if I'm being honest. I mean, I could have, but I had so much to learn, and he was able to teach me in a way that because he understood me. He knew where I was. He knew he'd been there. And so he was able to take me exactly where I was and go, let me ask you a couple of questions. Let me give you another perspective. And all of a sudden I learned, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm still the problem here. And it was so beautiful, but like I learned the lesson. And so I hire the people that I think, again, they're where I want to be, and I know they used to be where I am or where I've been.
I so appreciate that, because at this level, working on figuring out coaches, it's been a little challenging.
Yeah.
And what questions you ask when you're there, because they'll go, well, what do you need coaching in? I'm like, well, all the areas that are not working, because nobody's all areas working.
When the good coaches know what to ask you, though. So, for example, I started coaching with Stefanos this year. I seeked him out because, to me, every time I heard, he's a relationship coach.
Okay.
And shortly after we met, actually, I hired him the next week. Actually, I was I was in that mode. I was going to figure this stuff out. And
I love it.
It was so instrumental, because I would listen to his clips or watch his videos, and I'm like, man, this guy gets it. This guy knows how I feel about all these things. And so I flew to Austin, went and met him, hired him, and, started working with him. My first call, I didn't know where it was going to go either. I didn't know what I needed.
Right.
And my very first call, I'm telling him about my dad and some of the things growing up. And he goes, where was your mom during this? And it was that one question. He just knew that one question. I was like, oh, and she was just avoidant. God bless her. Like, we've been over this, but like, she was an avoidant. And so I never had that person that would like come check in on me and make sure I was okay and all those things. And so I wasn't familiar with, and it was like, oh my gosh. And from there, our next 6 months of coaching was about healing this wound of like the feminine and just being taken care of and allowing that in my life and finding peace with my relationship that I didn't even know there was a problem there with my mom. I've never felt anything but good feelings for my mom.
Right.
And I wasn't necessarily taken care of emotionally when I was little. And so like there's both things can be true, but I didn't even know till Stefanos asked the question what to even know what to ask or what to work on. Are
heroes born or made?
Made.
You think? So this whole journey, because I know I'm on a hero's journey and I can feel it and I can map it out.
Everybody's on a hero's journey. I think everybody is. And whether or not they answer the call is the question.
Okay, well that's because I don't think a lot of them do. My parents did. My mom, there was no hero's journey. I just got out of the gate and stayed very small. And so for everyone who's
by the way,
small,
people will do whatever they need to feel safe. And if your parents stretching past wherever they did, they just didn't feel safe. My mom wasn't able to take care of me because she was emotionally trying to take care of herself. She didn't feel safe.
Well, wait a second. When you're uncomfortable, you're not safe. So what drives us to be uncomfortable? Why does somebody want to jump off a cliff?
Well, I think you exercise that feeling of being uncomfortable and pushing through it. Like it's a skill that you can learn.
Right.
Every time, it's why I do so many things with my guys. It's why I make them jump off a cliff to start the program.
Right.
Because every time your body and your mind and everything's going, no, and you push past that, your ability to do it is so much better. So like when I first started, right after my Mormon mission, I got home, I was in college, and I had a rule because I was like kind of nervous to talk to girls. I didn't know how I just made a rule. I said, no matter what, I have 3 seconds. If I see an attractive woman, I'm going to go talk to her, period. It's over. The conversation's over. And I did it. I'm not kidding. For years,
so wicked.
I went up to every single, I didn't care if I was in the grocery store, church, school, it didn't matter. I went up to them. And you know how many times they'd be like, hey, sorry, I have a boyfriend or whatever else. I'm married or I'm not interested. Oh, I got my ass handed to me. But guess what? It got so easy to approach a woman, which is like, did you know that, by the way, 18 to 30 years old men, over 50% of them have not approached a woman in person in the last year? Single men. It's crazy. It's like it's a lost art because it is so terrifying if you're not used to doing it. It got to be second nature for me. I had 25 pickup lines. They weren't even pickup lines. They didn't sound like pickup lines, but they were. Like I knew exactly what to say.
This is so funny.
I knew how to set it up. Like I knew, and so it became second nature. My point is I went from a terrified boy that didn't want to talk to girls to everybody was like, dude, we got to bring Jimmy because if there's girls, we're all going to end up getting to know him because Jimmy's going to talk to them all for us. And my nickname was the initiator because they just knew I was going to go in and talk to everybody. And so my point is you can learn these skills. You can push through like in business, right? Like people are like, oh, I'm not going to cold call. You're like, I'm not going to go knock doors. Well, that first day on the door is going to be a really hard one. That first week is going to be a really painful one. By the time you've been out for a month, if you've been knocking doors every day, the new guy would come knock with you and think that you're the freaking all-time expert. And you've only been doing it a month. I learned that as a missionary. My first day on the doors, I was terrified. I didn't know what I was saying. And I just tried. I just like, whatever, I'm just going to strike out. They don't even know what the hell I'm going to say anyway, And so I just start talking. And like by the time I'd been, I think 3 months in, I became a trainer. And I remember the first day had a new guy with me and I taught him what to say and he was looking at me like I'm God, and it's been 3 months. I barely knew what I was doing yet. But my point is like, we very quickly get the uncomfortable can become comfortable. And then your ability, so like throwing this conference this weekend, I wasn't even nervous. You saw me. I was present the whole time. I didn't have a single worry. When I threw my first event of 50 people, I was terrified. I was fasting. I was asking God to help me. I was doing mushroom trips to try to be inspired. I was doing whatever I could. I was, you know what I mean? I was like all in on this thing to just make sure I didn't screw it up. And now it's like second nature because you become comfortable with the uncomfortable and then the new thing becomes uncomfortable. And so part of the gift of life is figuring out where the uncomfortability is. And, and you race towards that. I think who was it yesterday? One of the speakers, he said, use fear as a compass to figure out where to go next. I was freaking brilliant. I was like, oh my gosh.
You also hired a really good team because one of the things that as we grow in business, having the team work is the dream work. Is that part of what you...
Oh yeah, I mean, team's everything, and I've always had 2 or 3 great people on my team. I've had a hard time scaling past a couple key players, to be honest. That's the thing I'm doing next. Okay. But it's because it's not my skill set. My job is to hire one great person that can hire the rest. Like that's what I've never done. That's what I'm currently in the process of doing, and so it's all a process. For me, uncomfortability last year looked like. Stefanos was the one that came up with this. He said, you need to go sit in the mountains by yourself for 2 hours. Just sit there with no phone and just sit and let whatever. And for most people, that's probably the most uncomfortable thing to do. I'm uncomfortable
just thinking about it now. Right.
So
I just got kicked off of Facebook and I'm like really grateful. Like I have my life back.
Why did you get kicked off Facebook?
Well, I think I did 3 things. They don't tell you. They're very dictatorship that way. We're just, you went against community standards. Well, I figured out, let's see. One, I did Naked Mastermind in January.
I don't even want to know what that is, but yeah.
Well, no. And Bradley was one of my guests last year, David Meltzer this year, Naked from the Shoulders Up. So you're all in your Zoom boxes, and girls who wear tube tops, it's not a big thing, but when you see all the guys without the no clothes and like no collar, you're like, we all look really naked. And then we have these very truthful conversations, and it was called I should have called it now in retrospect, it was my second year, the Naked Truth Mastermind. But Naked Mastermind might have gotten some little AI going, let's look at her account. Number 2, I did a huge training called Make Money with Forbes. Altruistically, I am a really great affiliate marketer. I had to do this. I had to pitch. And so I created a free training. And so I was pitching it everywhere because it's free. you can only promote so much
yeah.
before Facebook goes, you're not buying ads. We don't like you very much. And then 2 years ago, I was hacked out of my Facebook account, and some gentleman from Pakistan, because it said Pakistan on there, was holding me hostage and not very nice about it and demanding money. And then when we Facebook didn't shut that down. It's very clearly not my account. Finally got it back, and unfortunately, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, no.
And what happened was I ended up having 2 accounts with my name on it.
Got
it. Any one of those things, all I know is I got a very big thing going, you're shut down. I'm like, I'm what? All my friends are there. All my friends are probably thinking that I'm being really rude because I have a profile that I can't get into, can't answer. And it's a little disheartening. But if I believe, and I do very strongly, that life happens for you, not to you.
Sure, of course.
I'm looking at this going, I'm sure I could make another account. Right now, even work-wise, would spend an hour, 2 hours on that every day, doing what I do. I said, this is interesting. I have a little bit more time to finish writing the book that I'm working on, or maybe not do anything or sit in a mountain for 2 hours.
Yeah, I challenge you to go try it. My goal this year is to spend 18 days without a phone, where I'm just by myself. So
why?
Because that's the thing that makes me the most uncomfortable. Yeah, it's probably the thing that'll help me the most. So like even my nervous system, like being able to regulate that to be comfortable with things that are safe and things that are healthy. Like I thrive in chaos because I grew up in a chaotic environment. And so for me, noise and chaos and a mess is very comfortable. But as I regulate my nervous, that's why meditation is so important. That's why all those different kinds of going to the mountains is because more and more I'm getting more uncomfortable in chaos and more comfortable in stillness and silence.
So here's the download that I'm getting. I'm a bit of an introvert, which ironically, I'm sure when you saw on stage, you might not think, really? And I don't knock on as many doors as I should, whether it's my PR things or movie deals or all the things. And I've got a couple of scripts and books that I've not put out there because it requires me to pick up the phone or dream about the agent who can help me do that and do the work and literally knock on the door. And I'm looking at you and I'm getting this inspired going, all right, Forbes, my challenge is not to sit in a mountain. I'm good at that, is to stretch and be that uncomfortable. I used to have a teacher, an acting teacher, who used to make us do this. And I'm thinking about him now. He's gone many years. And as an actress, this is show business. We're all really good with the show, but very good people with the business. He used to make us send out 100 headshots a week. We had to take team meetings 2 or 3. I'm like, team? I'm not a team. I'm an actress. Team meetings every other day. And then you had to pick up the phone or do whatever. And then he did a thing called terrorist theater. I don't know why he called it that. But if he determined that you were not on your game, you had 90 days before he kicked you out of class. And we're talking, this class had lots of famous people. You did not want to leave class.
Yeah.
And he charged a lot of money for class. So part of me is going, really? More money than I ever paid for anything back then. Do you remember this? Remember Seinfeld?
Seinfeld? Of course.
Yeah. Remember the Soup Nazi? Mm-hmm. Okay, Soup Nazi was in my class.
Oh, nice.
Soup Nazi got put on terrorist theater. He hadn't had a job in a year. On day 89, he decided to go into this audition and just do what he wanted. That whole thing is all him. He's like, it was not written that way. He's like, no stuff for you. And he booked a job and he saved his ass in class. Yeah. And I'm reminded that I've not had anybody push me to do that. Nor would I even ask a mentor to do that. But you just became my new spiritual mentor.
Yeah, I love it. Well, that's, that was my biggest takeaway of the entire conference as a student of it was wherever your fear is, that's your compass to tell you where you need to go. It's just brilliant. So the thing that'll make you uncomfortable. Forbes, we could talk all day. Where do I send people if they want to learn more and get to...
Okay, you can certainly reach out to me at ForbesRiley.com. Everything is there, but a free gift is just simply free gift from Forbes, and it is that introductory script that I use, and I use it all day, every day. It's got 12 prompts. It's a beautiful document. I gift it to all of you guys.
Awesome.
Use it and network your butt off and be uncomfortable to be successful.
Perfect. And if they want to reach out to you on Facebook?
They can't. Did you see what he just did to me? That is so rude. But I'm on Instagram, Forbes_Riley.
For now.
Ooh.
Thanks, Forbes.